Thursday night. It's taken a while to get used to being on a different night and being early. The sun's still out. It's just, I don't know, it's just weird. So anyway, last week we started out with what an investigation is, what a paranormal investigation is, and we kind of talked a little bit through that. We defined it. We talked about some pointers and stuff. So I believe last week we left it off with the game plan. So tonight we're going to cover a little bit more from there and go forward. I know these shows seem like they're a little boring, but you know what, guys? Investigating is not what it's like on TV. You don't just sit around and have activity happen, pop, 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 like they do on Ghost Adventures and so forth. So there is a lot of work put into the front end of things on an investigation, and then when you go back to review your evidence afterwards, there's a lot of work there too. So it's a little boring. We don't just sit and have activity all night. There's times that we almost fall asleep on investigations because nothing happens. So we'll kind of get through these slides. We've probably about another week or two to go through it. We're actually going to do some filming, some live filming this weekend. I've got NPS rep Jason Black joining me this weekend, and he and Deegan and I are actually meeting up with 2 other NPS members for the first time, and we're going to do some investigating this weekend and probably some debunking as well. We're going to be hitting a cemetery in a park that's got some alleged activity, so we'll kind of put it to the test and see what happens. So you guys will probably see that, I would say, coming up the first week of July. We'll have that on so you guys can see us doing some live stuff, kind of going through what we went over last week and what we're going to go over this week and next week, just kind of going through the steps. Now, the other cool thing about tonight is after my show, we're going to be going into NPS Focus, which will premiere tonight, and we're going to be talking about aliens and UFOs on that show. So you guys are going to kind of get a double whammy from here on out. You're going to get some good stuff from me, and then you're going to see me again on that show with Candy. So you guys are going to get kind of tired of me after Thursday. So let's go ahead and let's get into it. We're starting to see everybody come in the chat room, so the reps are in the chat room. So you guys that are watching on the computer, if you guys will scroll down below the viewer, you can see the chat room and join everybody there. So let's just go ahead and get started. This week we're going to talk about meeting with your client. So last week we left off with the game plan. We talked about training, very, very important. We talked about the paperwork that you need to take on your investigation. We talked about the client intake, which is huge. You guys, I got an email this weekend late at night from a potential client that I actually passed off to my director with NPS, Alex, and his team to handle since they were closer. But that first email, that first contact is very, very important in following up with them. We were actually the first team out of several that she had contacted to respond back to her. So that's very important that you're timely with your clients. We talked about location research. And we talked about the links on the NPS website that you can go to do the research of your locations. So make sure you check that out. Again, all of this information is on the NPS website. And if you can't find the details there, most of it for Ghost Hunting 101 and for going through these steps is going to be on the DNS Paranormal Crew webpage as well. So we talked about location research. We talked about gathering of the experts. And we were talking about experts. We were talking about professional people, not certified people. There's a difference, okay? So we talked about who needed to go on that mini investigation, which we're going to talk about some more tonight, and who needs to go on the actual investigation. So your quote-unquote experts, your tech person, your video person, that type of thing. And then we talked about laying out a game plan. What are you going to do when you get there? So let's go ahead and let's pick up a little bit tonight. Talking about the game plan. Let's walk through that a little bit, and then we'll hit some of the other points. So we're going to look at getting organized. Something I love to do, and it drives people crazy, but let's look at getting organized. So what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Who's going to be there? So the first thing you need to determine is who's going to be there. Who from your team is going to be there? A lot of the larger teams, like we talked about last week, they have a founder, they have a case manager, and they have a lead investigator at minimum that will go out and meet with a client. So you need to figure out who's going to go. For us, since we've got a smaller team, it's usually just me and Deegan that go out, and we might pull in.
And you're live. Sheri?
Gotta love live TV. You guys, at least you know I'm not pre-recorded until we start doing the investigations. So anyway, we were talking about who comes along with DNS. So we'll bring those people along, and usually we don't make it any more than 4 people, guys. You don't want to overwhelm your client first going in and have them think, who the hell are these people coming in my home? So figure out who's going to go. If you have a larger team, like I said, it's normally going to be your founder, your lead investigator, and your case manager. So those are going to be the 3 people that go. After that, you're going to do your research on the location. Have you done that beforehand? Or are you waiting to do that afterwards? I personally like to do it beforehand so that I know what I'm looking at going into it. I want to know the history of the land, the history of the building. I want to listen to what my client told me on my client intake. What kind of research do I need to do? Make a list of questions, guys. I mean, you may have some stuff that came up when you were talking to them. You may have some stuff that have come up during your location research. Make a list. What else do you need to ask the homeowner? Do you need to ask more in your research? Did you find out that maybe there was a building on the property that was burned? Do we need to find out some more information about that? Did nothing come up on the location, and maybe it's more centralized towards the family or a certain individual? So make your list of questions so that you can ask. Go prepared. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a client meeting and I take, and some of you guys have seen this because you've been with me, but I will take my handy little notebook, big old sucker, and I've got all my notes in there. I've got everything in there, and they have told me that me walking in made them feel better because I came across as being professional, which I am. You guys that know me well know I can be a little crazy too, but for the most part, when I'm with my clients, I'm very, very on top of my game, very professional. So make sure you have your notes and you're organized going into it. Think about things when you are looking at the client intake and looking at the location research. Have you begun to lean one way or the other as to what the hauntings related to? Land, home, residence, a particular item in the home, etc. I've had a client case here recently where there was actually an antique bed that was involved in some of the activity that was going on. So kind of be aware of those kind of things. You might want to make a list of questions as you're walking through your client's house, you know, and you're seeing antiques and antique furniture. Hey, how long have you had that? Did you just get that? In my client's case, they had just bought the bed in December when the activity started picking up. So those are kind of some clues to be thinking about as well. Are you planning on doing a mini investigation afterwards? For DNS, we will always do a mini investigation afterwards. We want to leave that client knowing that we are not only taking them seriously, but we are looking at everything and getting them some relief. So are you going to do that? If you're going to do the mini investigation, which I personally highly recommend, what are you going to do? What are you prepared to do? What equipment are you taking? For us, at a minimum, what we do is walk through pictures. Do we need to talk about walk-through pictures? In the 1, 2, 3 rule, make sure you're taking your walk-through pictures. You do it during the daylight so you can make sure and get accurate pictures. This is going to help you when you go review evidence later. I guarantee you. If you're on the NPS group page on Facebook and you're posting a picture, you need to be aware that we're going to ask you for a before and after picture. We're going to ask you for additional pictures. If it was from an investigation, I'm going to ask you for your walkthrough picture. So be prepared, okay? Make sure you take plenty of pictures. Take your video recorder. Are you going to video inside the home? Is there enough activity to video? Are you going to take your trigger objects and are you going to video a ball that you've placed in the middle of the room because you believe it's a child spirit? Are you going to do an EVP session? Well, hello, that's kind of a giveaway. You want to do an EVP session. Are you going to use a pendulum or your dowsing rods? Are you going to actually communicate? Are you going to communicate through your Ovulus or through your ghost box or through your echo box? All of this stuff you need to make a list of what you're going to take. Your temperature and your EMF readings need to be there as well. It's very important to document all that on your mini investigation to establish the baseline, and then you're going to take those notes from your mini investigation and bring them back for your full investigation so you have a comparison, okay? Take your notes, keep your notes with you. And what's the most important thing that you should be taking in addition to your equipment when you go meet with your client? Your client forms and your client questionnaire. You need to make sure you've got it. You should have started filling this out when you were doing your client intake. You should have made some notes along with that so that when you go meet with them in person, you can get it completely filled out. So that's pretty much it. Your game plan is the interview attendance, who's going to be there, your location research, what's your list of questions about the location, are you going to do the mini investigation and what are you bringing? Make sure you've got your list there and your client forms. Make sure you've got all that organized and together. So the next thing we're going to look at is who goes to the client interview. We kind of talked about this a while ago. Larger teams have a team founder, a case manager, and a lead investigator. You might also want to bring an expert. Now remember, we talked about experts could be mediums and psychics. So make sure that you are staying in tune with your client, what's going on, listening to what they're saying, and figuring out who you need to bring. You may need an empath. You may need, you know, I don't know, if they're a different religion, you might want to bring somebody that's Wiccan or pagan, okay? Make sure you're paying attention to all of that. You need to make sure that you make your clients feel like you are truly paying attention to them, because you should be. I'm not going to say anything more about that. We kind of covered it. So let's go on to the next slide here. We're going to kind of zip through tonight pretty quick. Okay, so the initial client in-person interview. Now, guys, when you go out, I know a lot of teams have team t-shirts, and we're proud of wearing our t-shirts. We've got DNS shirts, too, that you will see us out wearing. But take note of one thing. When your client is talking to you on the phone, listen to their tone of voice. Listen to what they're telling you. They may not want you showing up with your car decals or your t-shirts giving off that you're a paranormal team. They may not want their neighbors to know that they're having issues in their home, okay? Be respectful of that. When we go out for the first time, we go out in plain clothes. We don't wear our team shirts. We don't put the decals on the truck, okay? Have a little bit of respect for your client and where they're at. I know we all like to get our name out there, and we like to market, and we like to see our team name everywhere, but think about your client and make sure that you realize when you're stepping onto their street and you're stepping onto their property, that your confidentiality agreement, whether it's signed or not, is already in place, okay? If they tell you they don't care that their neighbors know, that's a different story. But I would still approach it as being professional, okay? So make sure when you go out, you've listened to your client. Is it or is it not okay for me to wear my team t-shirt, okay? You're going to want to have your client questionnaire, and I'm actually going to pull my client questionnaire out so we can go over some things. We have a packet that is put together that we take on any client case. Well, hi, Candy. Glad you could join us. We have a packet that we take with us that has all of our forms in it. And what we include in our form, and we kind of looked at this a little bit last week, we have our client questionnaire. We have our client info release form. We have our disclosures and expectations form so the clients know what to expect. We have our release of liability, our site access agreement, because remember we talked about we want to make sure that we've got permission to be on site, and we have our client mutual release form. The other thing that we might include, since we're going to be taking pictures and we might be doing walkthrough audio, is we might have the audio, video, photo release form for them to sign saying that it's okay for us to take those pictures. And then on our form, we actually give them options where we can share them, not share them on the website, not share them on the website, share them on the show, not share them on the show. So be thinking about that as well, because you do want to get permission from your clients for that stuff. Now, in my handy dandy notebook, I feel like we're doing Blue's Clues here, we have all of our stuff. I have all of my case information, and this is where I will always keep my client questionnaire. So our questionnaire, I'll kind of show you. You're not going to be able to focus on it too much, but I'll kind of show you.
Sherry, could you restart your camera, please?
Restart my camera. Is it acting up again?
Well, I think it never did come back on after my internet took a blip. We got storms going through down here, so.
Yeah, I know. We've had them here too. So is that better?
Oh, that's perfect.
Perfect. Okay. So our client packet, I don't know if you guys can tell how thick this is. It's probably about 7 pages, but it covers everything. So, and hello, I mean, I've got everything in this book. And if you guys want to know how I organize my book, you can send me a message and I'll kind of tell you what I keep in it. Now, on our client questionnaire, you go through the basics. So we'll go through some of the stuff on the phone as far as the address, the name, the phone number, their email address, so you can send them forms. We want to get a list of who all lives in the house, the children, grandparents, aunt, uncle, whoever lives in the house. We want to make sure we have that information. You want to know how long they've been at their residence. You want to know how many bedrooms it is. You want to know what their religion is. A lot of that's going to come into play because you don't want to go into, you wouldn't want to go into somebody that's of Catholic religion and be using a different kind of belief system when you're going in there and trying to take care of things. So be aware of that. That's something that's very important. And it's probably something you should ask during client intake. So when you go out to meet with them, you're kind of respectable of that religion and you kind of know how to point your questions. Now, the other thing that we have here and I'm going to see if I can make sure you see some of this. You won't see all of it. But I don't know if you can see all of these checkbox questions that we have. These are yes and no questions that we go through with them. And they're, they're simple questions. Any recent remodeling, any occupants on prescribed medication. Don't be afraid to ask if they're taking meds. You owe it to your client to know if they are or not. Nightmares, if they use illegal drugs, if they drink heavily, does anybody have psychic abilities? I mean, we've got all of these questions, and then we've got notes that we can take when we're talking. So you guys, organization, make sure you've got it all. The other thing that we'll start with, and you can see it's more note-taking and blanks, we'll ask about when did everything start happening. We'll ask how often it happens. What do they think's going on? Kind of ask them. They may have some family that's got a psychic gift, and they kind of have an idea of what's going on. Ask them. The other thing that we will check off, and these are just check if they apply type questions. We've got 2 columns of these, and I know you guys can't read them, but at least you can see how long and detailed that is. But we will ask them, do you hear voices? Has your name been called? Any smells or odors? Any physical contact? Have you seen anything? Have you felt anything? Have there been mood changes? Has there been an anniversary of a loved one's death? We will ask all of these questions. And again, we've got room on here for notes. Go through it. Ask everything. And what's funny is you'll start finding, as you're asking these questions, they'll start remembering other things that are kind of odd to tell you about. So you'll start getting some clues. The very last page here, we're asking, have they asked for another team to come out? Sometimes teams aren't as professional or as thorough as they need to be. Some teams, unfortunately, will come out once and leave the client hanging and not do anything. Some teams will do more harm than good. Ask them who's been out and what they've done, okay? And then we ask them, what is it that they hope to achieve by us coming out? We kind of want to know what their expectation is of us so we know we can meet that. And then at the bottom, we have them sign it, we sign it, okay? This is one form that I keep. This is from my notes. Every other form that I take in my client packet, I take 2 copies of, and I make sure that I sign a copy before I get there, and I hand that to them in a folder and tell them that's their copy of all the forms they're going to sign. Don't ever ask somebody to sign a form and not give them a copy. This is the paralegal speaking now. Don't ever do that to somebody. Make sure they've got a copy of what they're signing, because you can read through it and go through it. They're going to forget what they signed later, and they're going to wonder, what did they sign and why did you have them sign? So just leave them a copy. It's not that big of a deal to print out too, okay? So make sure we go through all of those forms. In addition to that, like I said, you'll have your info release form, your disclosures and expectations, release of liability, your site access agreement, and your client mutual release form. And yes, you can do some forms in email. I think it's really good. What I do with my clients, I actually send them the questionnaire and ask them to fill out as much as they can before I get there. I want them to feel like they are totally in the process here, because they should be. Guys, this is your client. It's their home. It's what they're experiencing. So I will email them stuff and say, hey, do you have an email address? Can I send this to you? Do you have anything you want to send me? Start that open communication right there. People are going to feel more comfortable when you start opening up different ways for them to communicate with you. That's pretty much it for your client packet, what you need to go through. These forms, guys, we're working on the education tab of the NPS site. There will be these forms, not ours specifically, because ours has our logo on it. But we will make them available to you guys to be able to download off the NPS site so that you guys can have your own forms and kind of keep yourself organized and on top of things, okay? So, moving along, the client interview and questionnaire. What key points do you need to cover when you sit down to meet with your clients for the first time? Well, we kind of went over this, so let's go right back through it. Oh, you don't do anything through email. Well, tell me why. You guys, if you're missing the chat room, you're missing all sorts of other stuff. You do it all on paper. You know what? Our reps, I tell you what. So some of the things you're going to cover, and we kind of went through this, but we'll go through the list again. You want to go through their religious and their spiritual beliefs. Key item right there. How long have they been at the residence? How long has it been going on? What's the history of the residence? Have there been any tragedies? Have there been any deaths? Has somebody, I don't know, come out and cursed the property 50 years ago? What do they know about it, okay? And And yes, Candy's making a point that email is a legal form of communication recognized by the federal court systems. So you guys, when you're sharing information, again, that's going to be covered in some of the forms that they're signing that it is okay. Is the location, key thing here too, is the location close to water, airport, a cemetery or funeral home, railroad tracks, electric or power sources? Is it sitting on Native American burial grounds? Are there cell towers nearby? Is it near where a war or a war site might have been, or a battle? Okay, those are some things to be thinking about, because that can bring up some activity too. When you're doing your location research, if you know this information, it's going to help you, okay? Has the previous team been out? We talked about that. Has the location been blessed or cleansed? And if it has, who did it and in what manner? What form did they use to do that? Has there been any recent remodeling or construction? What is the health history of the residents, both physical and mental, and a list of their medications? Now, if they're too embarrassed to tell you, you need to make sure and let them know. You just have to cover everything thoroughly. You're going to have some clients out there that are seeing and hearing things, and it may not be paranormal related, okay? It may be because they've been prescribed a medication and they're not taking it. Is there any drug or alcohol abuse? Have there been any, excuse me, can you turn it down and go the other way, please? Has there been any dabbling in the occult, a Ouija board, seances, voodoo practice, etc.? What have they been doing, or what have they allowed to be done in the house? And has it happened before they moved in? What have their experiences been? Now, this is where you're going to want to pay attention, because this is going to be your clue as to what to key in on when you're doing your mini investigation and when you do your full investigation. Have there been any sounds, moving of objects, scents or odors, touching or assaults, hot or cold spots, plumbing or electrical issues, sleeping disorders or nightmares? Those are the kind of things you want to find out and know. And then you want to kind of get a summary of activity from them. When did it start from them? Has it just been one person? Has it been the entire family? Has it just been a child? You want to get that summary of activity. Those are pretty much the key things you want to touch on when you're sitting down to talk to your client the first time. And from going through all of that, other things will come up. Trust me, people forget some things have happened until you bring it up and ask them. Now, Candy's making a point that burial grounds are rare. Truthfully, locations are guarded as sacred grounds to keep people off of them. If you have an individual making this type of claim, you need to contact the BIA for confirmation. So you guys make sure you know all of this stuff. People think that you're just going to grab a flashlight and a recorder and you're going to go out and you're going to investigate and you're going to find ghosts. It's not like that, guys. It is nothing like what it's like on TV. So make sure when you're getting into this field and you're doing this, you know it's a lot of work. It's really a lot of work. You have to know a lot of different things. All right, so let's move on and let's talk about the actual mini investigation. So during your mini investigation, now you've sat down, you've talked with a client. They've told you whether they've heard sounds, had some issues with, I don't know, doors or cabinets slamming, being pushed, being touched, that type of thing. So you already have an idea of what you want to test for, what you want to try to recreate and capture. So if you're going to do the mini investigation, yeah, Zach will be coming out with his succubi, that's dang sure. So let's sit and let's go through what we're going to do. So your full investigations, when you're going to bring everybody out, you're going to set up your DVR system, you're going to do all that. A mini investigation is not like that. You are only going to spend 1 to 2 hours maximum doing your mini investigation. You want to get in and get out. Get your information and get out. You want your clients to absorb everything that you guys have talked about, and you want to kind of make sure that they're comfortable with you too. And you're going to contact them to come back. So you're going back, you can spend more time later. Right now, we're just kind of getting a sample of what we need to take care of. So we're going to set up our cameras in the rooms where the client has reported activity. And these can be your handheld cameras. A lot of people nowadays are taking their video cameras, whether they're infrared, night vision, or if it's one of the cool Paranology's new cameras that are kind of wireless, and they're setting them up in the room and recording that way instead of doing the whole DVR system, rolling out the cables and all that stuff. So set up a camera where there's been reported activity. Then you want to set up voice recorders through the areas where activities happened, in addition to keeping one on you. So if they've been hearing voices and whispering upstairs, you want to put a recorder in that area, but you also want to keep one on you as well. And you'll want to do some burst sessions as well. So make sure you're marking all your areas where you need to. Did you bring any trigger objects to set out in order to drum up activity? Remember we talked about bringing a ball and having a child. You can bring candy. You can bring games. You know, think about if you've done your research on the property and it's been a house that's built in the 1940s or 1950s and you think the activities from back then, think about some of the games and some of the toys they played with back then. You know, you might want to bring a deck of cards, or you might want to bring a set of jacks or some dominoes. Think about that. Don't come out with the latest and greatest toy now because they're not going to know what the hell it is. So kind of think about their day and time. And, you know, we talked about a little bit, Shannon did, their terminology back then too. So keep that in mind when you're doing your investigation. The other thing also, do not spread baby powder and glitter all over their house. I like doing the glitter all over the house. If you're going to do that, make sure you bring either the plastic drops you use when painting or you use a black trash bag. Make sure you clean up after your clients, because that's all on you if you're that rude and you're not cleaning up at your client's house. I'm reading the chat room comments. All right, so when you conduct your EVP session, you could do your dowsing rods, your pendulum to connect with the spirits. You could use your ghost box, your obvious, your echo box. Make sure you've got all that set up too. So that's it for a mini investigation. You're not going to do anything more than that. Right now, we're just trying to get a sample of what's going on. What do we need to come back and focus on? We've focused on making sure it shouldn't last any more than 1 to 2 hours. You're only gathering additional information to decide whether or not you even need to come back. You know, it may be that you get some stuff set up and you realize the house is cocked a little bit, and that's why the doors keep shutting. You might be able to debunk a lot of that while you're there for the mini investigation. So that's why you do it, to determine if you need to come back or not. You're also going to determine who you need to bring along when you come back if you decide to do that full investigation. Are you going to need additional experts? Are you going to need to do further research? What do you need to do before you come back? So that's why you do the mini investigation to figure out what do you need. Then when you wrap up that night, you're going to tell your client, hey, we've got our stuff together. We're going to go and review this. I want to follow up with you in about a week. I want to see if there's been any more activity since we've been here. And I want to get set up for this full investigation. So make sure you follow up with your clients. A lot of teams don't. And a lot of teams will go through the full investigation and never come back out, leaving their clients just sitting there twiddling their thumbs. You've done them no justice and you've totally disrespected them. So make sure you follow up with your clients. Now we're just going to hit on a couple of other things. When you're going back to do your full investigation, we're going to look at some basics here. And this applies to whether it's public, private, residential, commercial, I don't care. This is going to be kind of your overall cheat list for you guys, kind of like I like to do and kind of like what Fear likes to do, is we want to make sure that you've got kind of a checklist of things. And this is something that you can hand to any newbie in the field, and it kind of gives them the basics in one sheet. One thing that Candy is saying is, yes, we do need to document the entire home. So we talked about your pictures and the 1, 2, 3 rule. Make sure you take 3 pictures in succession. If you're doing video, you can video through. You know, sometimes it's a good idea just to video it anyway, because you never know what video is going to look like when you get ready to investigate versus doing a full lights on walk through the house in the daylight. It gives you comparison. That's the biggest thing I can tell you, is you need to have that comparison. And then you also want them to start keeping a journal of activity, which normally I will ask my clients to do that when I have the first contact with them. The very first time they call me, I will ask them to start a journal that day. Going forward, my experience has been the day that I talk to the client up until the day that I arrive, activity picks up. And on my last 2 clients, the activities picked up the day we were coming. So have them keep a journal. I've even had one client's journal completely disappear because that spirit did not want me to know what was going on. So you never know what's going to happen. Nothing surprises me anymore. So going back to just a simple list that you can hand out to newbies, or if you're doing fundraisers for public events and so forth, you want to make sure you get permission. Never go on an investigation alone. Do your homework. We talked about research. Do your homework. Ensure your equipment's ready to go. Be positive. Conduct a walkthrough prior to investigating. Walk through the location that night and know where the squeaky boards are, where you might misstep and trip. You want to know where that stuff is. That's why we do a walkthrough. Smoking and alcohol don't mix with investigating. We'll talk about that. Log it and write it down. Make notes. Never wear perfume, cologne, or a distinct scent on an investigation. Spirits do emit odors at times, so you don't want to mask that. and never form a conclusion on site. So let's go back and let's look at this. You're going to get permission. Why do you need permission? This is why we do the site access agreement. Let's say you're done with a mini investigation. You go back in 2 weeks and the client's like, I don't want to be here when you're investigating at all. I'm going to meet you down the street. I'm going to hand you my key. We're going to go out and go catch a movie and go out to eat. You know, we'll call you when we get ready, or we'll just come home at such and such time. You can lock up. We'll meet you back down at the street. If you are on their property and you're investigating and the nosy neighbor next door sees you, they're going to call the cops. And what's going to happen when the cops get there? They're going to ask you what the hell you're doing at that location. And you can show them a piece of paper signed by the owner that you have permission to be there. The same holds true, you guys, when you are doing commercial investigations and you're at a location. We have plenty of locations, especially here in the Texas area, that you can go and investigate. Make sure you've got something in writing from that owner if they're going to leave the property and let you stay there and investigate. Just cover your butt. I mean, it's better to be safe than sorry. Have it in writing. Make sure waiver forms are signed as well, especially if you're doing a public investigation. Every single guest needs to sign a waiver form so that they don't hold you responsible when they trip on their shoelace and they get hurt on that location, okay? It protects you and it protects the owner, the property owner. Never go on an investigation alone. You know, this should be a given, guys. This really should be a given. Things can get dangerous on a physical and spiritual level. If you have a partner with you, you've got somebody there to help you. We've all heard about, and I think it's been about 1.5 years now since this happened, but we've all heard about the investigator that passed, and they thought that initially it was because she had inhaled something on a location. If something had happened to her, let's say if she had had an allergic reaction and she was there by herself, there was nothing that anybody could have done for her. Make sure you go at least in pairs, okay? I don't care where you're going, even if it's a cemetery, make sure you go in pairs. It's never safe to be out late alone anyway. Carry a cell phone with you. I know we tell you guys not to have them on investigations. 2 different things. You can have a cell phone on you to call for an emergency. You can turn it off while you're investigating. 2 different things. The notes I have say to make sure it's on vibration during your investigation. I say leave them in the safe room. If you're going to be using them for your echo box, you need to make sure that the airplane mode is turned off, and just be aware of you are using a cell phone. How's it going to affect the rest of your equipment? Do your echo box session, turn your phone off, go put it in the safe room, come back and finish up, okay? The other thing that you can think about, and it's what we have, is we have handheld radios that we use, so when we go on investigations, we can radio each other and get each other a little quicker than having to worry about finding a cell phone tower and that type of thing. Okay, do your homework, do your research. What do? We research and we investigate. Make sure you look at the location for your investigation, for the history, for the current and the past. You might also interview some people that may know something. Let's say that you're investigating an old building. You know, there used to be those big Times Squares where everybody hung out. Why don't you ask some of the other businesses if they're having activity? You know, kind of put your investigative cap on it and do some questioning and find out. It's only going to help you to solve your current case. Ensure your equipment's ready to go. So we all know we need to have fresh batteries, and we all know we need to have extra batteries. But we've been seeing some stuff come up on the NPS page with pictures that makes me kind of giggle, because it means that you're not reading and researching and looking at the NPS website. Because when you're taking pictures and there's a smudge on the picture, it means you haven't cleaned your lens. It also means that you're not cleaning inside of your camera either, because we found out about lens fungus and being able to clean for that. Your fingers get all over your lenses. Dust gets all over your lenses, or daubs when you take some pictures. Clean your camera. Clean your video camera. Clean your DVR system. Guys, this is your equipment and it's an investment. Keep it clean. You don't want false positives because you forgot to wipe a fingerprint off of your lens, okay? Batteries, great. Everything charged, great. Clean your equipment. It's gross. Let's see, what else did I have down? The basics that you want to bring along. Okay, so let's say that you're doing a public investigation and they're asking you what to bring. The basics that any investigator would want to have is a flashlight, a good flashlight, a digital voice recorder, a handheld digital video recorder, and a basic sound enhancement computer program to review your EVPs. That's really all you need starting out. You can add all the fun stuff and all the Paranologies equipment later, but that's really the basics of what you need. You're taking somebody out for their first time and you're training them. Remember, we talked about training. That's what you're going to want them to have. Now, be positive. Remember, we talked about bringing negativity into an investigation and how that can kind of spark up some stuff. So you guys, a lot of teams like to go out and have team dinner before they go on an investigation. They like to kind of let loose from what's happened during the day, what's happened at home, kind of build that camaraderie up and that positivity. So when they go into the investigation, they're hyped, they're ready to go. The positivity will attract more than the negativity, and it will attract more of what you want than the negativity. So be positive. You're more likely to get a response from a spirit if they don't feel threatened. And a lot of people, if you notice, if you smile at people, they smile back. People are attracted to that positivity. Spirits are too. Conduct your walkthrough prior to investigating. I cannot stress it enough. How many times have you heard me say it now on the show? Probably 4 times, 5 times. Take plenty of pictures for comparison, okay? You can never have enough pictures. Now, that's not to say that you're going to capture something, because you're probably going to capture a door, or you're probably going to get some lens flare. The point of taking those pictures is not to have evidence of the paranormal. I'm sorry, it's really not. The point of that evidence is to have something to compare back to debunk and disprove, okay? Was there a blanket on the couch, or was there not? Was there a plant back there? What made that shadow? What made that lens flare? And the other thing that you want to do, and I've seen this on the page and it's driving me crazy, do not take pictures into a reflective surface. You guys that are taking pictures into a window, and especially a mirror, why are you doing that? You're not going to capture anything paranormal except for a lens flare, a door, or something along those lines. Just don't do it. If you need to take a picture of the mirror, that's an antique mirror hanging up in the hall, do it at an angle. Don't go stand in front of it and take a picture. You're doing yourself a disservice when you go back to look at it and review for it. So just don't do it. But take lots of pictures. Take video of the location if you can do that. Walk through and take video of it inside and out, okay? Just be smart, because you know what? Let's say you have to drive 2 hours to your location. You're going to come home. You're going to start reviewing stuff, and you're going to wonder, there's some steps outside that could have made that noise. Well, you'll know if you can go back and look at pictures and video, okay? You're also going to know from your notes that you stepped on that step and you made a creaky sound when you stepped on it, okay? Pay attention. Now, a lot of people think ghost hunting's fun, and they talk about, you know what, I could probably do that if I had a drink, or I could do that if I was drunk. I'm telling you right now, alcohol does not mix with ghost hunting. And DNS, if we even know that you've been drinking when we go to investigate, you don't get to investigate that night. You get to go home, okay? Same goes for smoking. Do not smoke on site. We take breaks. Deacon does smoke, so we take breaks, and he will go outside in a different location to smoke and then come back in and we get started, okay? That's another area for false positives, is smoking, okay? Let's keep it away from the client site. Let's keep it outside, away from our investigation. No drinking, no smoking, okay? Log it and write it down. So we talked about the squeaky board. If you're walking along and your client has nice wood flooring and they're in an older building or an older home and you hear creaks, you need to make sure and make notes of that for that room, because you're going to be investigating and you're going to hear a creak and you're going to wonder, what was that? Well, it could have been your partner that was going by to go downstairs to check something on the DVR system. So make sure you're making those kind of notes. Always have a notepad with you. I always carry a steno pad with me. The other thing that I do, and what I'm more notorious for, is notating it on my recorder. So when I'm done, I come home and I'm reviewing stuff, I have it on my recorder. I'm just kind of ADD like that. I would rather speak it than really have to write it 100% of the time. And when it's dark, I can't see my pad, and I'm kind of lazy. I don't want to turn on light, so it's easier for me to notate it on my recorder. Whatever you do, notate it. Whatever works for you, notate it. Wearing a perfume or cologne or a distinct scent. You know what? You're going to miss out on some stuff if that spirit is doing its best to work up enough energy to communicate with you, and they can't muster up enough strength for an EVP, but they can muster up enough strength to have you smell flowers. And if you're wearing a cologne or a perfume with a floral scent, you're going to miss it, okay? It's also rude to other people, because a lot of women, and there's a lot of them that are guilty of it, wear a little too much, and sometimes that gives people headaches. So let's go into the home and be respectful and not wear any of that stuff, okay? You also will miss, and you might be covering it up without realizing it, some of the foul odors if you have those going on from the spirits. Now, the other thing, and the very last thing, was never form a conclusion on site. You're going to want to review everything before you form a conclusion. I don't care what your client asks you. Hey, what do you think you got tonight? Hey, what do you think it is? You know what? I kind of have an idea of what it is, but I need to finish reviewing my things. Because you know what? You might be able to debunk some of it once you get back home. So never form a conclusion on site. From there, let's go back to looking at a list of things. I'm kind of trying to go over being organized and going through things because some of the things you may not think about, some of the things we may take for granted. We talked about last week hearing a demon, and we joked because Selena was talking about make sure you eat before you go on the investigation because it's probably somebody's tummy rumbling. You know, common sense tells us we're going to have dinner or we're going to eat or we're going to have something to drink or we're going to have snacks. Common sense in the heat of the moment doesn't tell us that that growl we heard was somebody's stomach in the other room growling, okay? So some common sense stuff, we're just going to run through it real quick. All of this is on the DNS Paranormal Crew page underneath the Ghost Hunting tab under Before Leaving Home. So these are the kind of things you want to make sure you run through. And you might also print this out for when you're doing your training of your newbies because it's going to take you a couple of times to kind of get it down and remember everything, but at least you'll have it. So we've talked about making lists. I'm a big, obviously you can tell by my book, I'm a big list person, okay? If I have to remember to bring it, I will put it on a list. So make a list of the equipment you plan on bringing. You may have some equipment that you really don't want to bring on this particular investigation because it's not going to apply, or you may want to do some old school methods just to try to get some better results. So make a list of what you plan on bringing with you. You might even plan those out based on location, if it's outdoors or indoors, okay? Indoors we can get away with a little bit more than we can outdoors, but outdoors we need to really think about picking up noise from the street, animals, and that type of thing. So be thinking about that as well. Everything should be in good working order. Again, freshly charged with batteries and clean. Remember to stash additional batteries in your backpack, your case, or your bag in case you need them. You might stop by the store on the way out and pick up some more, okay? Battery draining is pretty common when investigating. You might also ensure that you have a lens cleaning cloth for your camera or camcorder lenses. Just throw it in the bag. My cam bag's got everything I need for my camera. I don't have to worry about it. Some locations can be dusty if you're outside, and there's going to be some dirt-filled areas. Those can cause potential anomalies, which might cause some confusion when reviewing evidence later. Make a note of that, okay? You guys have probably seen my infamous picture that I took of my kids and Selena's son with fear out at the cemetery where we had them run around in the gravel and stir up the dirt, and we took pictures and then we let it settle. Guys, that's the kind of stuff you're going to be dealing with, so make sure you make a note of that and make sure you're cleaning your camera while you're out there, okay? You might also, if you're going with a team, or if you're going on a public investigation, some of us that have our own teams, we still like to go out on public investigations. Yes, that stuff's kind of fun. Make sure you label your equipment with a permanent marker or a label or something like that so that when you are leaving stuff in a room, nobody walks off with your stuff. It's just smart. And if you made your list of equipment that you're bringing with you, when you pack up to leave, you can run back through your list and make sure you have everything. It's called being smart. Make sure your cell phone's fully charged. Again, we talked about not using it during the investigation, but if you want to use it for your Echo box, that's going to take some power. We're going to get into something else here in a little bit, why you might also need that to be completely charged or fully charged, or at least have your charger with you, okay? The other thing to think about, you know, guys, it's not so much right now with the summertime as it's going to be in the wintertime, but think about the clothing that you're wearing on an investigation. And I'm not talking about whether you should wear black or white. We all know better than to wear white when we're doing night vision camera. At least the women really know not to wear white, you know, to wear black. But what I'm talking about is the material of the clothing that you're wearing. When it gets to be rainy and cold, we like to wear more of a raincoat type or a parka or a very nice jacket. The sounds of that rubbing together, your sleeves on the coat, can give you some false positives too. So be aware of that when you're going to pull out a coat or a jacket to go on an investigation. Is this my noisy one? I might not want to wear it. Does the zipper jingle? I might not want to wear it. So be thinking about that. Dress in layers in the cold, and that might help you be able to shed one layer if you notice that it's just a little too noisy, or it's making, it's rubbing or something like that. If you're outside, make sure you're bringing bug spray and repellent, and you're wearing boots. You guys should be wearing closed-toed shoes on your investigations anyway. I'm probably the big violator of this in the summertime because I like to wear flip-flops. I have to bring my shoes. I will wear my flip-flops till I get there, and then I put my shoes on. So make sure you're thinking about that as well. And make sure they're rubber-soled shoes. Some people like to wear a hunter's vest to keep all their stuff on them. That's great, but again, remember, if you're hitting it and making noises, you need to notate that when you're doing all of your investigating. We talked about the windbreaker, jewelry and keys. Ladies, if you're wearing earrings, make sure they're not loud. Make sure we're not tapping our rings together, wearing bracelets, that type of thing. You can contaminate your EVP session sometimes with that. If you forget, that's great, because as soon as you hear it, you're going to notate it on your recorder anyway. We talked about perfume and cologne, so we've pretty much covered what you're going to wear and what you're going to have on your person. So let's take a look at some other things here. Do you have any medication that needs to be taken in the evening? Now, we're a little older and we have to have blood pressure medicine. I say we collectively. Deegan has to have blood pressure medication. Is that something he needs to take that night and take with us? So make sure you've got that. Are you allergic to certain things and you need to bring something with you, an EpiPen or something like that? That should already be in your safety kit in your bag, okay? Make sure you have all of that. You might also keep some Sudafed, some Benadryl, some Claritin, some Zyrtec, something along those lines, because if you are investigating outside, you may start developing allergies while you're there, and you can take something so that you're not miserable. So make sure you've got that. Also make sure you've got some Advil or some Tylenol too. Do you need to bring a chair? Are you going to be sitting outside or in an abandoned building where there's no place to sit? Are you going to bring a chair? Is it a creaky chair? Do you need to make a note of that? Think about bringing a cooler full of water and drinks, snacks, stuff to keep you hydrated and eating so we don't have the demon growl, okay? Some of us like to take an energy drink when investigating. That's great. Stop and get that too. Make sure your first aid kit has a hand sanitizer in it, along with different size bandages, antibiotic ointment, pain reliever, dust mask, and even gauze. You might consider preparing an essentials bag that has toilet paper, tissues, paper towels, your first aid kit, and other items you might need for any investigation location. People laughed at us when I was on my previous team because we always had a bag that had toilet paper, paper towels, napkins, and that type of thing in it, but I can't tell you how many times we refer back to that bag for something because we forgot, or something happened, or we needed to clean up something, somebody spilled water because they fell asleep, whatever, okay? Better be prepared than not prepared. Now, you're researching your location. You've got your research notes with you. You've got everything packed with your equipment for reference, so you should be okay. Don't rely on your memory for things later. Make a note. Whether it's in paper, whether it's on your recorder, make a note. You're going to be encountering stuff as you're walking along your investigation. Notate as you're going along. Keep a time, 10 o'clock, we started hearing footsteps upstairs. Especially if you're doing a mini investigation, because at 10 o'clock when you come back for your full investigation, you're going to want to go and sit and see if you hear that again or around that time, okay? Okay, now, we talked about making sure the cell phone was charged. This is where that comes into play. You need to make sure that you consider every worst case scenario. And I'm going to tell you guys, it has happened to me and Deegan, so don't ever say it won't ever happen. Does your vehicle have a good spare tire and a jack in the event something happens? Do you have jumper cables in case your car battery goes out? Spirits like to toy with stuff, guys. Be smart. Is your vehicle in road trip shape? Do you have plenty of gas? Is your insurance card, GPS system or directions, phone charger, and toll tag in the car? If your road trip consists of being on the road for several hours, you might want to look at a hotel nearby to get some rest before driving back. If you're carpooling, you guys look at, kind of changing off drivers every couple of hours. Now, let's say something happens, your car breaks down, and you've got to stay somewhere overnight because you're on this overnight trip. Do you have everything you need to get by until you get home? Credit cards, toiletries, clothing, etc. You guys laughed at me about the toilet paper, right? But what happens when you're stranded because your car broke down, okay? Make sure you just pack a little bag. Just be safe, okay? Make sure you have a list of phone numbers with names to call in the event of an emergency. What if your cell phone battery dies? We are all guilty of carrying everything on this little device because this is our lifeline. If this dies, Do you know the phone numbers that you need to call? Have a small list in your wallet or in your bag so you have it. If something were to happen to you and you passed out, do the people that you're with know what your emergency contacts are? Do they have your medical information? These are things you don't think about, and these are things they don't show on the TV shows. Guys, you have to be safe and look out for yourself. If you become ill and need to be hospitalized, does somebody know your insurance information? Does somebody know who to contact? Does somebody know your preference for hospital? Make sure you've got that information. You guys, for the larger teams, you should have a medical information sheet signed by your members, giving you their information. Okay, it's just smart, guys. It's just smart. Have a safety binder. Let's see. You need to make sure you have the numbers of who to call in case of an emergency, along with a list of medications that you take, just so that you have that. Keep it in your wallet. It's safe to have that anyway. Even if you're not investigating, it's safe to have that anyway. And then you also might consider, a lot of people put in their cell phone a thing called ICE in case of emergency. Make sure you put that in your cell phone, because if your cell phone is still fully charged or has some charge and something's happened to you, somebody can pick it up and take a look at that information. So those things are kind of boring, folks, but they're the kind of things that are going to save your life if it needs to happen. You know, we can go out to work tomorrow morning and have something happen. All of that stuff still applies whether you're investigating or not, okay? So just be smart. Let's just wrap up with a little bit here on arriving on site and getting ready to go. You guys, walk through pictures, your research notes, figure out how you're going to split up your team for the full investigation. Everybody should have a radio in the event of an emergency. And the last thing that you do after you've got your game plan together, you're on site, you're ready to go, is do your prayer of protection, or whatever you're going to do to protect yourself that night. We have on our last investigation, I had someone contact me about my investigation and tell me to be fully prepared and protected going out, so I stopped and got some extra crystals. But we also got a whole thing of salt to put around the truck. So, you know what? You can never be over-protected, but you can be under-protected. We have stuff follow us home all the time. I've experienced it. I know other people that have experienced it. Better safe than sorry. Be overprotected rather than underprotected. So I'm going to kind of wrap up the show there for this week. Next week we'll go into a little bit more of the full investigation. We'll start going through debunking items. We'll start looking at some stuff on the NPS site when it comes to photography. It's my department. It's kind of what I'm going to touch on. We've talked to some of the other reps and some of the other department chairs on DNS Live prior. So you guys should have those notes, and they'll also have their information on the NPS website as well. So we'll go through a lot of that next week. Now, tonight, what I want to do is thank all of our sponsors, and then we're going to get ready to roll into NPS Focus. So I hope you guys are ready for that, talking about aliens and UFOs. So Eric, if you're ready, let's go ahead and throw up a big thanks to Paranologies for tonight's show, and keeping us supplied. You guys have got some awesome stuff coming out. Jeremy never ever lets anybody down with something he's got coming out. We want to thank Scott Frederick, our professional photographer sponsor. He's got some awesome stuff. We're using a lot of his pictures for the backgrounds of stuff. We want to do a huge shout out to Blessed Bee for supporting the show. You guys, if you need anything, books, crystals, any of that type of thing, that's the place to go. And then we want to give a shout out to our newest sponsor, Front Range Ghost Shop. You guys can go out there and buy equipment as well. So between Blessed Bee and Front Range Ghost Shop and Paranologies, you guys should be hooked up pretty good. So I am going to call it a night because we've got another show coming up. You guys, if you have any questions about what we covered tonight, a lot of that's on the DNS page underneath the Ghost Hunting 101 tab. It will be coming up on the NPS website under the Education tab. I'll let you guys know when that's ready. If you have any questions, feel free to PM me or email me or get a hold of me somehow. I'll be happy to go over stuff with you. But until next week and until a couple of minutes from now, I will see you guys later. Have a good one. Weekend. I've got NPS rep Jason Black joining me this weekend. And he and Deegan and I are actually meeting up with 2 other NPS members for the first time. And we're going to do some investigating this weekend and probably some debunking as well. We're going to be hitting a cemetery in a park that's got some alleged activity. So we'll kind of put it to the test and see what happens. So you guys will probably see that, I would say, coming up the first week of July. We'll have that on so you guys can see us doing some live stuff, kind of going through what we went over last week and what we're going to go over this week and next week, just kind of going through the steps. Now, the other cool thing about tonight is after my show, we're going to be going into NPS Focus, which will premiere tonight, and we're going to be talking about aliens and UFOs on that show. So you guys are going to kind of get a double whammy from here on out. You're going to get some good stuff from me, and then you're going to see me again on that show with Candy. So you guys are going to get kind of tired of me after Thursday. So let's go ahead and let's get into it. We're starting to see everybody come in the chat room, so the reps are in the chat room. So you guys that are watching on the computer, if you guys will scroll down below the viewer, you can see the chat room and join everybody there. So let's just go ahead and get started. This week we're going to talk about meeting with your client. So last week we left off with the game plan. We talked about training, very, very important. We talked about the paperwork that you need to take on your investigation. We talked about the client intake, which is huge. You guys, I got an email this weekend late at night from a potential client that I actually passed off to my director with NPS, Alex, and his team to handle since they were closer. But that first email, that first contact is very, very important in following up with them. We were actually the first team out of several that she had contacted to respond back to her. So that's very important that you're timely with your clients. We talked about location research. And we talked about the links on the NPS website that you can go to do the research of your locations. So make sure you check that out. Again, all of this information is on the NPS website. And if you can't find the details there, most of it for Ghost Hunting 101 and for going through these steps is going to be on the DNS Paranormal Crew webpage as well. So we talked about location research. We talked about gathering of the experts. And we were talking about experts. We were talking about professional people, not certified people. There's a difference, okay? So we talked about who needed to go on that mini investigation, which we're going to talk about some more tonight, and who needs to go on the actual investigation. So your quote-unquote experts, your tech person, your video person, that type of thing. And then we talked about laying out a game plan. What are you going to do when you get there? So let's go ahead and let's pick up a little bit tonight. Talking about the game plan. Let's walk through that a little bit, and then we'll hit some of the other points. So we're going to look at getting organized. Something I love to do, and it drives people crazy, but let's look at getting organized. So what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Who's going to be there? So the first thing you need to determine is who's going to be there. Who from your team is going to be there? A lot of the larger teams, like we talked about last week, they have a not going into it. I want to know the history of the land, the history of the building. I want to listen to what my client told me on my client intake. What kind of research do I need to do? Make a list of questions, guys. I mean, you may have some stuff that came up when you were talking to them. You may have some stuff that have come up during your location research. Make a list. What else do you need to ask the homeowner? Do you need to ask more in your research? Did you find out that maybe there was a building on the property that was burned? Do we need to find out some more information about that? Did nothing come up on the location, and maybe it's more centralized towards the family or a certain individual? So make your list of questions so that you can ask. Go prepared. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a client meeting and I take, and some of you guys have seen this because you've been with me, but I will take my handy little notebook, big old sucker, and I've got all my notes in there. I've got everything in there, and they've told me that me walking in made them feel better because I came across as being professional, which I am. You guys that know me well know I can be a little crazy too, but for the most part, when I'm with my clients, I'm very, very on top of my game, very professional. So make sure you have your notes and you're organized going into it. Think about things when you are looking at the client intake and looking at the location research. Have you begun to lean one way or the other as to what the hauntings related to? Land, home, residence, a particular item in the home, etc. I've had a client case here recently where there was actually an antique bed that was involved in some of the activity that was going on. So live on Thursday night. It's taken a while to get used to being on a different night and being early. The sun's still out. It's just, I don't know, it's just weird. So anyway, last week we started out with what an investigation is, what a paranormal investigation is, and we kind of talked a little bit through that. We defined it. We talked about some pointers and stuff. So I believe last week we left it off with the game plan. So tonight we're going to cover a little bit more from there and go forward. I know these shows seem like they're a little boring, but you know what, guys? Investigating is not what it's like on TV. You don't just sit around and have activity happen, pop, 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 like they do on Ghost Adventures and so forth. So there is a lot of work put into the front end of things on an investigation, and then when you go back to review your evidence afterwards, there's a lot of work there too. So it's a little boring. We don't just sit and have activity all night. There's times that we almost fall asleep on investigations because nothing happens. So we'll kind of get through these slides. We've probably about another week or two to go through it. We're actually going to do some filming, some live filming this founder. They have a case manager and they have a lead investigator at minimum that will go out and meet with a client. So you need to figure out who's going to go. For us, since we've got a smaller team, it's usually just me and Deegan that go out, and we might pull in.
Wow. My internet is taking crap. And you're live, Sheri.
Gotta love live TV. You guys, at least you know I'm not pre-recorded until we start doing the investigations. So anyway, we were talking about who comes along with DandS. So we'll bring those people along, and usually we don't make it any more than 4 people, guys. You don't want to overwhelm your client first going in and have them think, who the hell are these people coming in my home? So figure out who's going to go. If you have a larger team, like I said, it's normally going to be your founder, your lead investigator, and your case manager. So those are going to be the 3 people that go. After that, you're going to do your research on the location. Have you done that beforehand? Or are you waiting to do that afterwards? I personally like to do it beforehand so that I know what I'm looking